Yeah, hello guys, Cloudie here, checking in from the America server. As you can probably guess from the little cutscene that is playing, today we are gonna be talking about Valance, the latest addition to king_sreigd, hero number 102. This is gonna be the usual review about skills, perks, gears, and so on. And I have to say, I still love this costume so much. Her tier 5 or 5-star actually, I really do like it, and even more so than the limited one. But alright, let's get into Valance. See what she is all about and what you can do with her, which kind of sounds wrong now that I think of it. So let's see. Valance is an NPC hero that you can obtain through the story dungeon, which is available right now. After that, you will have to clear stage 10, I believe, and you will, at the next login, you should receive her for free, which is good because NPC heroes are kind of expensive to build. With her you can say she is a mechanic and physical type one at that, but thankfully all her buffs, her main role is buffing your team, and all her buffs are universal, which is pretty good because it doesn't create a gap between magic and physical, so I'm quite happy with that. Her attribute is that you get a discount in the techno magic gear crafting, which is also quite nice. But let's see what kind of skills she has, what she can do, and where you can use her. So skill 1 is her prototype VA. So this is like a hologram skill, 3 mana and 15-second cooldown. So dispels negative effects from the ally with the highest attack and grants hologram for 15 seconds. So this is the same duration as the cooldown. This increases the target's attack by 100k almost, crit chance by 350, and gives a decent heal there every second. Reduces cooldowns of all active skill by 0.2 seconds. While the hologram is active, the target gains immunity to negative effects. So this in itself is pretty dope, and the attack boost also has like a skillbook update. So has a near 100% uptime even if you do not have skill cooldown reduction skills or TM lines. Gives attack crit chance. With this kind of crit chance buff, you can pretty much run 0 crit chance on a lot of DPS characters in various situations, so that's pretty dope. And reduces your cooldowns, plus you are immune to negative effects. So this in itself makes it so good, but not the main buff of Valance. So yeah, let's move on. Let's see what else she does. Absolute protection field. Now this is a hell lot of mana and a 20 seconds cooldown. Creates a force field that lasts for 5 seconds and has a wide area range. Allies within the range of this force field have their all defense increased by 15%, gain immunity to CC, and have their HP healed by a certain amount, and mana recovered by 600 every second. So that's a lot of mana that you gain from this one, and the skill books give this a lot of extra defense as well. So this is a very defensive skill, but as you can see, it costs a lot of mana. Plus, it has a 20-second cooldown with only a 5 seconds duration, but for that duration, you are pretty OP. So this is again very good, especially for harder fights and where you actually need to manual. Otherwise, it's just like a random bump in mana and a bit of HP, but still pretty good to have. And then her skill 3, which is super long. 4 mana, 20-second cooldown, summons laser cannons, you heard it right, laser cannons, behind herself that fire laser beams dealing physical damage, and the target is inflicted with a stun, and it's a pretty big stun, all of these hits together, and they get this manipulated effect for 15 seconds. Afterwards, the cannons additionally fire a total of 9 laser beams to random enemies, so if there is one target, then they will all hit the same target. If there are more targets, then they distribute it randomly. Each laser beam deals damage and inflicts more stuns, and inflicts the manipulated debuff for another 15 seconds. Enemies who are manipulated have their heal rate reduced by 5% and take 7% increased all damage, and this can stack up to a maximum 7 times. So if all the cannons are hitting the same target, then this buff will stack up on them. It's only 15 seconds, so it will not have 100% uptime. You kind of want to cast this before burst windows. So yeah, that's like 35% heal rate reduction and 49% increase all damage, which is not too bad. Yeah, it's kind of alright-ish. Let's put that away from there. Let's see, and we have Techno Magic Awakening. So this is her S4, and in retrospect, this is probably the least useful skill for her, because it only really works in Techno Magic Kingdom, or like part of it only really works. Let's see, so it increases her all defense by a certain amount, makes her more tanky, increases her mana recovery per attack by 400, and it gives all allies an attack bonus of 10%, which is then increased by the skill books. And then if you are in a Techno Magic Kingdom battle, then it increases your boss damage by 15%. So the main focus of this one is to make it easier for you to play in Techno Magic Kingdom raids and bosses. Outside of those, in the real endgame content, it doesn't really apply. It gives an attack boost, which is nice enough, but sadly you will not be getting the boss damage. Now moving on to her perks, let's see how building her perks will make her even better, provided I don't choke here while talking. Let's see, so this is I have a single page for her, but I already have her at 95 TP. The most important skills for buffing will be her S1 Dark and her Tier 5 Dark, and you can then choose either Light or Dark of her S2 depending on what you want. Let's see, so she has the standard mechanic perks, of course. S1 Light will give you a buff, will give the hologram buff to 2 allies, which can be good, like in Galgoria, or you could maybe use it for stuff like the cooldown reduction, but it's not really worth in scoring content and where you only have a single DPS. S1 Dark, on the other hand, will give you a 50% crit damage, and that's always nice to have. It will give a nice boost to your DPS. Moving on to S2, the force field will also give you like a 25% toughness, which is always good to have, especially if you are popping it before large nukes, say Apocalypsion, either Tercio popping the big breath, or Apocalypsion herself doing the earth shaking ground earthquake attack, something. Then this could be useful if you were to manual it. But yeah, otherwise you can go with the attack speed buff. This is if you are going for more damage done. The problem with this is it only lasts for 5 seconds, and 300 speed is like not that of a big deal. It's not bad to have, it's just I kind of feel like, for me, who isn't optimizing for various fights, I kind of just took this for Apocalypse, really. Let's see. S3 dispels positive effects from the hit target. Yeah, maybe in some situations, Apocalypsion, maybe where you need an extra dispel, or at least it's good to have an extra dispel, even if it's a very long cooldown. And then we have the Dark perk for it, which just reduces the mana cost by 1. Neither of these are terribly sexy for PvE. This could be good for PvP, perhaps. And then the S4 Light and Dark, again, these are only working in Techno Magic Kingdom, reduces damage all allies take by 30%, not too bad, but again, only in Techno Magic Kingdom. And additionally increases all allies damage dealt to bosses by 15%, but again, only in Techno Magic Kingdom. Therefore, it's really not that good, unless you are needing more help with farming TM stuff. And then the Tier 5 Dark, reduces all damage all allies take by 2.5% and increases all damage all enemies take by 2.5%. And this can be stacked up to the number of Techno Magic gear equipped to self, so 10% if you have a full Techno Magic gear set, which is pretty nice. I mean, well, that's kind of nice. And then, speaking of gears, let's move on to her unique gears, because that's where the real fun actually begins. So let's start with her unique weapon, which is of course the expensive part with NPC unique weapons. That's where you get to pay a lot or have to save up a lot. So what this does is that based on the number of technomagic pieces equipped to each ally, they get a buff from Valance, a passive buff, which will increase their attack, their all defense, their max HP, and their damage dealt by a certain number, depending on how many parts they have equipped. And then this scales quite nicely all the way to 15% of these and 10%. So she does scale pretty well with her unique weapon, which makes her an expensive build. But yeah, it is definitely worth it. So people who have been posting crazy increase in both damage and survivability just thanks to Valance. Now let's see her unique treasure. So UT1 is definitely her PvE perk. Let's see what it does. Let's go back to 0 star. So the effect additional increases damage dealt to non-hero enemies by 10% and the target's cooldown reduction by 50%. So this should take it from 0.2 seconds to 0.3, I guess. And the non-hero damage scales all the way to 25%, which is pretty good because this is a full uptime skill, which also gives a lot of extra stuff. So this the UT1 is hands down the best one for her in PvE, at least for most situations. Moving on, if I can find out which was her S2, this was her S2. So this spell's negative effects from self upon use for the duration of violet force field increases the target's all block chance. So yeah, this becomes then a self dispel, so you shouldn't be able to interrupt it while she's casting. And also good to know that you also can't dispel it because it's a field. Think of like Xero S3. So yeah, and then it will also give like a 500% block chance at maximum level. This kinda is a PvP UT, at least that's where I have seen people use it. It gives a lot of bonuses and stuff, so it's kinda nice to have. But yeah, only for PvP. Otherwise, PvE I would still say UT1. And then moving on, this is UT3. This is the cooldown of the lasers by 2 seconds, and this goes up all the way to 7 seconds. Which means that the 15 seconds cooldown uptime and the 13 seconds cooldown. So technically she can keep up the buff indefinitely, and the maximum stacks are increased to 10 stacks from 7. So that should be 50% heal reduction and 70% all damage increase. But that stays up all the way. I think the non-hero one is better, both for the cooldown reduction and the non-hero damage one. But there are certain situations, like if you need the extra stacks for healing reduction and for it to be always up, then there could be a case made for this UT, at least to carve off some seconds from like a 3-star is probably enough if you have some CDR to keep up your debuff on, say, Apocalypse. It would be an interesting thing to see, maybe if you can drop Solar Stone if you are using this one. Honestly, I haven't tested it out, but for raw damage, UT1 is still the best. And then we have the final one, S4, which makes the all defense boost and mana recovery effect apply to all allies. So now everyone becomes tankier and gets more mana, and then they get some heal rate. I don't really see this one being used, to be honest, so it's just a stat stick. So yeah, these are her unique gear and unique weapon. Of course, you can also check out her soul weapon. Let's see. Dispels negative effects from self, summons the soul of Wonder of Magus Le Flamme Corberos. Actually, speaking of the name, Corbeau is a French word, and pardon my French, I do not know how to pronounce it, but if you look it up, it literally means crow. So her weapon is called Crow Rose, which is, well, very original, but it does sound good. So yeah, for 10 seconds, amplifying the effect of Wonder of Magus Le Flamme, Corberos by 3 times. So what this does is that the Technomagic gear bonuses, the attack, the defense, the damage done, and the HP, that effect is tripled. So at 5 stars, where you had 15%, those go to 45%, so that's quite nice. Cooldown is only 18 seconds and it charges up over 23 seconds, which means this is a very fast soul weapon, both to charge and to cool down. And it has 6 uses, which is good, but in some longer fights, if she is on manual and cast is on cooldown, it can be not enough actually. Let's see, advancement phase 1 increases the duration of this by 5 seconds, which is nice, and you get a lot of extra mana out of it, so that's also quite nice. And then advancement phase 2, activation requirements are reduced by 10 seconds, so that's even faster charging, and upon activation reduces all allies cooldown of all active skills by 5 seconds. So this is kind of like a mini oddie, but it only comes through her soul weapon, and I think for an advancement phase 2 this feels a little bit weak, to be honest, to the point where I would say it's not even really required. Now I'm sure a lot of you will be now be like, but wait Cloudie, it is the skill cooldown reduction meta, and that's true for stuff like World Boss or stuff like where you have a lot of auto or where you need to squeeze in a lot of skills in a certain amount of time. It could be true even for, say, Apocalypsion, but in other contents like, say, not World Boss, Guild Conquest, for instance, which is a scoring contest, you don't really need cooldown reduction. To the best of my knowledge, nobody runs that. You are on crit damage aura, so there is a case to be made that you could technically run without this one, although some say that with this you can like squeeze in her soul weapon at every down phase with Valkazar, which kind of helps with damage. So final point, it's good to have, but you can get by even with like an advancement phase 0 is also good, or an advancement phase 1 actually will be already quite nice. And the 15 second uptime means that even for those 10-second burst windows you can precast it and it will be pretty good. Speaking of precasting, as we move into gears, there is a bug which was listed also in the known issues section by Vespa, that at certain speed, which I believe is over 2k speed for her S1 is like it doesn't work or gets cancelled out by her S2. So because of that, people have been running a fixed attack speed line, and I haven't seen any information from Vespa whether this will be fixed soon or anything. I have seen people run without this now, so it might be fixed and they just didn't say anything, which is kind of weird. For the time being, I couldn't quite reproduce the issue even with like more than 2k speed, so I don't know, but I haven't heard anyone say that it's actually fixed, so kind of scratching my head about that one. It's just good to keep an eye out for that. Now gear-wise is interesting because Valance has 0 stat scaling. She literally doesn't need any kind of fixed stats, which is really good for you because it means you don't have to go like super crazy about reforging for defense or attack or speed or whatever. You can build her like tanky. Some MP attack is good because her skills are really expensive to use, so probably speed and MP attack will be good stats for her, and you can like have attack for more healing. But all in all, you can go like ham on defensive stats for her and it will be fine. Of course, she likes being a support mechanic. She likes Siegfried set. Stat wise, attack of all allies aura, that's also attack of all allies. I only have 3 attack of all allies, it seems. Crit damage aura is also pretty good, or of course the reduces all allies cooldowns when you hit maximum mana is a pretty good TMPs for her. So that's pretty much it. And again, rune wise, I think I only have like toughness and block defense because she's geared for like Apocalypsion where she shouldn't die. And that's really all her skills and gears and stuff. Again, Siegfried set support lines, whether it's cooldown reduction for certain content like world bosses or like auras which help in GC and stuff. So where can you use her? Honestly, everywhere. She is like the final nail in the coffin of units like Oddie and Annette. Although Annette is getting a buff in a couple of days, so maybe she will have a comeback. but for most contents now where you can only have like one mechanic, like in all TM raids, or where you are already struggling to fit in all your supporters, Valance will most definitely kick out Annette and Doddy, and perhaps even your Shell in some cases, which is like really sad life for Miss Shell. Damage wise, people have been reporting some pretty big increases in all PvE scoring content, whether that is World Boss or Trials or GC. Friend of mine went from like 3.5Q to 5Q just by adding Valance instead of I think they replaced Shea in that team. So yeah, that's the kind of buffs you can expect. She is also making PvP teams a lot scarier because they come with a lot higher base stats, but her skills in PvE are... I have seen some scary teams, but usually those killed me before I could do anything. Otherwise, when I got to use my own skills, I usually did not lose, I believe. So there is a case to be made for her S1, S2 combo. And her S3 has some interesting uses too, but I think she might only really work for very bursty teams like Rebel Cloud stuff, maybe. But I'm not really that much of a PvP player, so don't wanna comment on this. Other than that, every single PvE content where you can slot her in, she will probably perform well, especially if you already have full TM sets, because her buffs tie directly into it. She doesn't need her unique weapon, which makes her a little bit more expensive, needs some time to save up for that, and some luck with Jin, and you're gonna need a full Siegfried set on herself to make her really work. So that's Valance for you guys. I really do love her design. She looks super cute, I think, and she is super useful, so I recommend you aren't like Way and grind her to build a pesky Loman or something. So yeah, that was Loman for you guys. If you have any questions about her or anything else, leave them in the comment section below. And this has been Cloudie for now. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye bye.